parts of Northern Ireland it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain, though, will come and go for more southern areas, with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, it's the Bev and Ben show. This morning we are going to be here from 9:30. The NHS is going to save your life because now they'll be able to see how many steps you've done on your app. That is my idea
Only
of hell.
at the cost of your privacy, though. Do you want the government intruding on your mobile phone and all your data? Are you happy with that?
No, I'm not happy with that at all. And it's International Women's Day. You're very excited, Ben, about
I want to pay tribute to all the mums all around the world, including my wife. However, I have a caution about vocal male feminists. They always turn out to be the biggest creeps, so we'll discuss that very, very shortly.
We will. That and a lot more, a lot of politics this morning as well. See you in a minute.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah,
and
also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly...
Yeah.
I mean, this is learning stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say that, will they? Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Friday the 8th of March. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo and Bev Turner.
Very good morning, thank you for joining us. So, a new NHS app is going to monitor your step count, that's right, to just see how unhealthy you're being and get you back to work. Are you on board with that?
Oh, I wonder what could go wrong. A Labour government looms, or does it? A GB News People's poll shows 46% of you, voters, plan to vote for Labour at the next election, dwarfing just 18% for the Tories. And, by the way, you trust neither party to handle the economy. Is it time for change?
MPs are warning that the Ministry of Defence has no credible plan to fund the armed forces that the government wants, leaving the UK increasingly reliant on its allies. Are we taking defence seriously enough?
And she's back again. Meghan's UK relaunch. The Duchess of Sussex looks set to hire British PR gurus to improve her popularity here in the UK.
Good luck. And the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, is going to step down as an MP at the next general election. She's represented the Maidenhead constituency for 27 years. We're going to be joined by her former political advisor next. A lot more this morning, but we really want to hear your views on this NHS fitness app. I mean, I'm calling it a fitness app. That sounds quite sort of benevolent.
So it basically logs how many steps you've done, sends data back in real time to the government. I mean, you're going to be the first person to download that, aren't you, Bev?
No. I mean, talk about Big Brother is watching. We said this was coming down the line. Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt get very excited about AI. I don't know whether you saw how many times they mentioned the word app in the budget. Jeremy Hunt, you know, an app is a solution to everything. Is it the solution?
Well, some of the plans include a doctor's, GP's receptionist calling you, an app calling you, a robot, to discuss your medical problems. I mean, I think the last person I want to be discussing my medical problems with is a robot or AI machine. But let us know what you think.
Yeah, maybe we're wrong. gbviews@gbnews.com. Maybe we're just being too cynical. First, though, the very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Thanks, Bev. Good morning. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Your headlines at 9:30. Protesters are set to demonstrate against the government's decision to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton. It comes 1 year on since plans to house migrants at the historic site were revealed, as the Home Office tried to reduce reliance on expensive hotels. The Save Our Scampton campaign is hoping to use the anniversary to put pressure on the government to abandon its plans. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak has been accused of failing to stop migrant channel crossings after a record arrivals topped 3,000 for the year so far. But Downing Street has insisted the government is making progress in stopping the boats. It comes as the UK has just pledged up to £1 million as part of a deal to get Libyans to return to their home country. London has become a no-go zone for Jews during pro-Palestine protests. That's the warning from the government's counter-extremism czar. It comes after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak warned forces are trying to tear the country apart. Writing in the Telegraph newspaper, Robin Simcox said Mr Sunak had been right to point to an increase in extremist disruption. He said now the policies are needed to meet the scale of the challenge and urged ministers to be bolder and be willing to accept higher legal risk when tackling extremism. And former Prime Minister Theresa May will stand down as an MP at the next general election, bringing her 27-year career in Parliament to an end. Mrs May revealed her decision to stand down as Maidenhead MP, saying she would focus on championing causes including the fight against modern slavery. She had been the Conservative MP for the Berkshire seat since 1997. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, it's back to Bev.
Very good morning, it's Bev and
Bev
Leo
Ben.
this morning. I'm not normally here on a Friday. You're normally here on a Friday, aren't you, Bev?
Yeah, thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure.
On International Women's Day.
Yeah,
no
exactly.
less.
I had a lovely time in Whitehaven this week. Thank you so much to the people of Cumbria who had GB News up there and gave us an amazing welcome. Now, the NHS finally is going to save your life. It's going to do it by monitoring your phone activity.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
So this is the idea, and you will have heard in the budget, Jeremy Hunt talked about this amazing technology is going to save the NHS. So this app, you can download it onto your phone. It's going to monitor your step counts. Now, it's part of a government plan to tackle unhealthy lifestyles and get people back to work.
So my only concern about this is what happens in 20 years when we have another pandemic and the government wants everyone vaccinated.
20 years? Good luck.
Yeah, sooner, you reckon? Basically, the fear is from the civil liberties camp is that we will go down the route something akin to China, where they have a social credit system. This isn't some conspiracy, by the way. This happens in China now. If you get a parking ticket or you criticise the CCP or you're a bad neighbour, whatever, your social credit score goes down. You're then restricted from, say, travelling from city to city or accessing financial services. So this proposal from Victoria Atkins, the Health Secretary, seems fine on the surface, you know, encouraging people to take steps and to eat well and be healthier. But the only concern is from civil liberties camps is where does this lead to? Does it open the door in 5, 10, I think maybe a bit longer, 20 years to something more sinister?
It's also about, I agree with everything you said there, Ben. It's also, and I think people need to just be aware of what's happening, because the government aren't talking about the longer-term implications of this kind of paradigm shift that we're experiencing at the moment. But it's where's your personal responsibility in this? Like, if at the moment we're not walking enough steps because we're, I don't know, sometimes it's nicer to just take a taxi or drive, whatever. Are we actually going to change our behaviour because we think the NHS is going to be a bit cross with us if we don't walk? That relationship between the state and the individual, infantilising people.
Yeah.
So that you're being watched all the time.
And forgetting everything else, it's just, you know, how much do you want to be nannied by the state?
Exactly.
It's actually not that... I've said this before on air, and you're going to lambast me now in the emails again. I'll say it again, though, because I believe it. It's not that hard to be fit and to lose weight. Just get some steps in, eat in a calorie deficit, lift a few weights if you can. And for most people, I understand there are some health implications for some people, but for most, it's just a matter of doing the right things and consistently.
And it's your data, it's your life. That's what bothers me. The Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, said that the service would make use of what she called the wealth of data to prevent serious illness. And she said it's the front door to prevention and to boost economic growth. Data, in and of itself, will not change human behaviour. I think they are completely deluded at the idea that if you suddenly feel that your doctor knows your activity... Imagine what that GP surgery appointment is going to look like. When you go and you sit down and you need to have an empathic, sympathetic relationship with your doctor, and they go, well, I looked at your data, Mrs. Turner, and you only walked 500 steps last
But what
week.
happens if you leave your phone with your kid and they're running around with it all day, racking up 30,000 steps, and the doctor thinks that you're really active, when in actual fact you've been sitting on the sofa eating Doritos?
Yeah, controversial, but not, frankly, as controversial as it should be. What do you think? GBviews at gbnews.com. Maybe you disagree with us. Maybe this would change everything.
Now, in a fresh blow to Rishi Sunak, the GB News People's Poll has found that nearly half plan to vote for Labour at the next election, compared to just 18% planning to vote Tory.
Though most of those polled don't trust either party with the economy, and most Brits seem to be running out of patience, as 37% want an election called as soon as possible.
Well, Rishi Sunak has now refused to rule out a May general election, so should he just get it over with and, go to the polls?
Well, joining us now in the studio is the Director of Jail Partners and the best pollster in the business, Scarlett Maguire. Scarlett, it's the poll season we're in now. We're going to be blindsided by polls, aren't we, everywhere we look? But they are painting a very bleak picture, not just for the Conservatives, but for both Labour and the Conservatives now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still have to sort of acknowledge that Labour, 20 points plus ahead in the polls. I think everything is pointing towards a Labour majority at the next election. That is quite an amazing turnaround from them, given their result in 2019. However, I do think one thing that poll flagged up, which is something that we're sort of seeing increasingly, is this none of the above. So, when asked, that one was about handling the economy. We've seen on who would make the best Prime Minister. Actually, more people go for none of the above than Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak, despite the fact that Keir Starmer now has a lead on Rishi Sunak on most of these things.
Why is there complete disillusionment then with the political class from voters?
Why? I don't know. It's something we hear a lot. We hear that there is this political disillusionment. I think partly it's the these people say to us that they feel like politicians have made lots of promises they then haven't kept, saying this is a pattern that's gone on in the last few years. I think another thing that's quite pervasive is this sense that people feel like they're all the same and that there's not much difference between them, and they're not necessarily being sort of straightforward about what it is they want to do. And I think there is also a growing sense of that politicians are saying things which are actually, ironically, given what I do, too focus grouped and too sort of trying to triangulate and guess around what people was actually thinking, instead of actually leading people. And I think people can pick up on that insincerity, and I think that's all part of it.
I think generally the class of politicians we have today are just so low grade. If you put half of them into a FTSE 100 company or, in a massive corporation, I don't think they'd last 2 minutes. I don't think they're capable. I think most of them are very incompetent people.
I don't know about incompetent. I don't know about...
Not only incompetent, but out of touch as well.
You can poll them on their incompetence.
Yeah, you can poll them on their incompetence, yeah, no, for sure. No, I do think, though, what you're saying is mirrored by an awful lot of the public. That's something we hear absolutely all the time. And they are quite fed up with the political class in general. I think, though, that all actually just drives towards the fact that people are ready to vote, as that poll also says, quite keen for an election, quite want to vote for change. And that's something we've seen that's going to be, a continuing problem for Rishi Sunak. Things like the budget, we had the autumn statement before, that won't make any difference because people have already moved on in their minds.
It's interesting, isn't it, when you say about the fact that this is so different to 2019, we're now in 2024, and obviously the main issue that every country dealt with in that time has been the COVID pandemic, whatever you want to call it. So it's almost like the public feel let down during that period of time by both parties, regardless of where you sat, on which side of that narrative you felt you sat on. Nobody has come out of that well from Labour or Conservative.
Yeah, I do think that there was no one in particular. I think there was partly because there wasn't much policy difference between the two. Labour decided they were going to sort of follow the Conservatives in something that, more closely resembled sort of government of national unity, at least in the early stages of the pandemic. I think it's that, but also we've seen this trend, especially amongst sort of Western democracies, that whichever government was presiding over COVID, but actually more importantly the COVID recovery, or the short-term COVID recovery, got a real kicking at the ballot box. And actually that's something that Joe Biden's going to have to deal with as well in America, something that we've seen across Europe, and now Rishi Sunak's looking at the same.
What can Sunak or the Tories do now to salvage some sort of election? I won't say victory, but to ease the pain.
It does look like, looking at the polls at least, and again, just sort of speaking to people, not just in focus groups, but anecdotally, that the best the Tories can do at the moment is sort of damage limitation, and damage limitation for them or for any political party. I mean, I guess holding on to your sort of core vote into your base, which they're not even particularly doing at the moment. That's why we're seeing some of these dire shares, like 20% of the vote. I mean, that's sort of existential for them. So they need to sort of rally around those people that are currently saying they don't know but did vote Conservative before, those people that are saying they're going to vote Reform. I think they've all but given up on the people who've already switched to Labour and those who didn't vote for them in the first place.
Do you agree with the concepts from the Reform camp and people like Aaron Banks who say that the best thing for the Tories is complete annihilation so they can rediscover some Conservative principles and, sort of rebuild their foundations and rise from the ashes like a phoenix in, 5 years or whatever?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not just Aaron Banks who say that, but some Conservatives even say that. So, I don't know. It's sort of... they are going to have to do a lot of thinking. I think the battle for the sort of Conservative Party is going to be very interesting after the next election. I think in some ways, and everyone's sort of already looking forward to that, the fact that you're even asking that question is quite telling of where things stand at the moment.
Talking to the people up in Cumbria this week, the number of people who came to talk to us and say hello and said, we want a Conservative government. And you might think, it's the Red Wall kind of area. And they say, we want somebody that represents... What are they conserving? They're like, what are they conserving? Are they conserving the family? No. The small businesses? No. Are they conserving a British life? No.
That's a problem for voters, for the Tories in the future as well, because people aren't having kids, they're not owning their homes. As you said, Bev, they have nothing to conserve in the future. So what use do the Tories have?
Yeah, I think it's a big problem for them, and this is why I think we're seeing them particularly struggle with younger voters, and not even actually that young, but only 1 in 10 under 50s say they're going to vote Conservative at the moment. That is shocking for them and going to lead them into problems, not just for this election, but the next couple if they don't sort it out.
Yeah. OK, thank you, Scarlett. Always good to see you. Thanks so much. So up next, Theresa May, the former Prime Minister, of course, is standing down. She's joined a very long list of Conservative MPs standing down at the next general election.
I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
Oh.
Brexit means Brexit.
I know, but...
It didn't in the end, did it, really, Theresa? I'm sure she... Actually, I've heard she's a great MP in her constituency and, a lovely lady, but in terms of Prime Ministerial...
success.
Don't know.
Well, we're going to be joined by her former political advisor next. Are you sorry to see her go? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
For decades, Britain has been dealing with immigration, but for one part of the UK, it is a relatively new experience. GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie has this report.
At the end of April 2023, Ireland's immigration was up by 31%.
And over a decade, Northern Ireland's has doubled, with South Belfast being the most diverse. Tracy Kelly is a DUP Belfast City Councillor who deals with the issues in this area on a daily basis.
We have working class communities like Sandy Row, like the Donegal Pass, who are blending in with others who are coming here to work and live and mix. But there is also an issue when there's too many people who can't get housed. That seems to be the main issue that I deal with. When people in their own community who've been born and reared here have to move away because there's a lack of housing.
Takura Makoni represents the African community of Northern Ireland.
I would presume mostly 99% of asylum seekers or migrants and refugees coming to this part of the world would have very little knowledge about the internal dynamics in Northern Ireland. So you find out it's almost like you're thrown in the deep water. To have the cognizance to say, here, I need to pick up that I'm living on a peace line and these guys don't like those guys and maybe these guys can tolerate me and those ones won't. You don't have any idea of that. It'll take you up to 10 years to get a real sense of that because, remember, you're focused on trying to rebuild your life.
To avoid further tensions, should government be looking at the placement of those refugees and migrants?
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I told you that I would rile some viewers with my comments about losing weight and just not eating, and that's exactly what's happened. So I'll share with you some of those emails shortly. I'm sure you'll be entertained. But now, former Prime Minister Theresa May will be standing down at the next general election. She was first elected as Maidenhead's MP in 1997, and she joins a growing list of Conservative MPs to step down whilst the tide seems to be turning on her party.
So, writing in the Maidenhead Advertiser, she says, since stepping down as Prime Minister, I've enjoyed being a backbencher again and having more time to work for my constituents and champion causes close to my heart, including most recently launching a global commission on modern slavery and human trafficking.
She says, these causes have been taking an increasing amount of my time, and because of this, after much careful thought and consideration, I've realised that, looking ahead, I would no longer be able to do my job as an MP in the way I believe is right and my constituents deserve. I've therefore taken the difficult decision to stand down at the next general election.
Probably not that difficult a decision, though, is it? Joining us now is former political advisor Charlie Rowley. Charlie, you used to advise Theresa May. What's your response then to the fact that she's going to stand down?
Well, I think it's a classic Theresa. You know, she recognises that she's only been able to become the Home Secretary and Prime Minister because of her constituents in Maidenhead. That's why she's there. She's always put her constituents first. And so giving it to the Maidenhead Advertiser, I think, is just a nice touch.
I quite like that. As a former local newspaper reporter, hats off to you, Theresa.
Yeah, exactly. And she was, you know, she is Mrs Maidenhead. She is very local, even when she was Prime Minister, and sometimes you'd be scratching your own head thinking, my God, why are we spending another weekend here when we've got all these Brexit problems going on? But she was committed to her constituents. She was committed to public service in Maidenhead and for the country, and it's very sad to see her go.
Right, Charlie, I've got a bone to pick with you. You were her advisor during the Brexit, her time as PM. and during the so-called Brexit betrayal with the Chequers agreement. Was that your handiwork?
Absolutely not. There were plenty of other advisors who you can pick off.
Now's your time.
This
is a
chair.
confessional, Charlie. You'll feel better if you just tell us the truth.
Well, I had a wonderful role spending most weekends with Theresa in Maidenhead and sort of picking her up and travelling there from London to Maidenhead, going around, making sure that the weekend duties were sort of covered, and should there be any issues, as there often were, with London, you were able to communicate those effectively and make sure that she was sort of kept up to date throughout the day. And but she, in all of those, meetings and visits, she was relentless in her.
Don't go anywhere, Charlie. We just got a little breaking news we want to bring the audience this morning. Don't go anywhere. So this is about the firearms police officer charged with the murder of Chris Cabba. Let's cross live to our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Good morning, Mark. Remind us of this story and how has it developed this morning?
Yes, this was Chris Cabba, aged 24, who was shot dead after his vehicle was stopped by armed police in September of 2022. Well, the officer who has been charged with Chris Cabba's murder had been known only as NX121. He'd been the subject of an anonymity order. Today, we can now name that officer as Martin Blake, a 40-year-old police officer. After that anonymity order was lifted, it was challenged by members of the media on the grounds of open justice. The anonymity order was originally granted by a magistrate's judge in September of last year, when this officer was originally charged with the murder of Chris Cabba. This incident, it was the 5th of September 2022, when a vehicle that Chris Cabba was in, an Audi vehicle, was pulled over by armed officers in Streatham Hill in South London. During that operation, a single gunshot was fired through the windscreen of that vehicle and struck Chris Cabba in the head. He died in hospital the next day. A year later, a decision was taken by the Crown Prosecution Service to charge this officer with murder. That led to a real crisis within armed policing in the capital, as hundreds of firearms officers handed in their certificates, effectively stepped back from firearms duties. And then again, there was real concern expressed by the Metropolitan Police at the naming of this officer because of potential safety concerns. So it remains to be seen what the reaction of those firearms officers in the capital will be towards this move. A decision by the judge at the Old Bailey, Mark Lucraft KC, to name this officer as 40-year-old Martin Blake. The judge said that he'd looked at all of the raw intelligence available to him and he had decided that there was no imminent threat to this officer or indeed this officer's family. But there will, without doubt, be very significant concern amongst those firearms officers in the capital and elsewhere who say they undertake very difficult operations on behalf of the public to keep them safe. These are split-second decisions that these officers make, and then the possibility that they could be charged and indeed named will be something that for some firearms officers, they feel it's no longer worth it.
OK, thank you very much, Mark. Charlie Riley, we were going to come back and spend more time with you, but we have unfortunately been beaten by the clock. In a word, was Theresa May one of our greatest ever Prime Ministers?
I think she will go down as one of those, absolutely, because of her commitment to service. I think that sums her up in a word. And
yes.
I see you've learned a lot about diplomatic answers from your political paymaster.
I don't care. I liked her, and I think on International Women's Day, it's good to reflect on one of only two female prime ministers. Right, still to come, we're going to be crossing over to RAF Scampton, where hundreds of protesters are gathering. This is 1 year on since the government used the site.
Yep. First now, your weather.
Yep.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south, though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east, there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day, though, than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight, we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north, though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England too, but across northwestern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland, it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain, though, will come and go for more southern areas with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
More to come on Britain's Newsroom this morning, including outrage over the defence budget. Why was no money allocated to the MOD and our armed forces in yesterday's budget from the Chancellor? Also, the F1 scandal and International Women's Day. You excited?
Not as excited as you are,
Oh,
Ben.
yeah. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stay with us.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do.
Or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
Good morning, it's 10 a.m. on Friday the 8th of March. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Ben Leo.
Coming up, taking a stand in Scampton. Protests are taking place outside RAF Scampton after the government's decision to home 2,000 asylum seekers there.
And Meghan's UK relaunch. The Duchess of Sussex looks set to hire British PR gurus to improve her popularity here in the UK. What would she have to do to win your heart back?
I wouldn't bother, I don't think. A Labour government looms, or does it? A GB News People's poll shows 46% of you plan to vote Labour at the next general election, dwarfing just 18% for the Tories. And you trust neither party to handle the economy. So, is it time for a change?
Is it a no-go zone for Jews? That's how the counter-extremism czar describes London with the ongoing pro-Palestine protests. Do you agree with him?
And bringing Britain to a halt. Average speeds on our roads are at their slowest for almost a decade because of roadworks and smart motorways. What's your biggest bugbear on the roads? And I'll tell you what, I spent some time in Australia, of course, in December, following Nigel Farage's jungle exploits.
Celebrity.
I drove from Brisbane down the Gold Coast to the base, about an hour and a half, in rush hour, on their motorway. I never once took my foot off the gas, never once went below the speed limit. Do that on the M25, you'll be stuck there for 3 days.
You will have all experienced it. I know it drives me mad every day. I drive in to work and I don't think I get over I never get over 20 miles an hour.
No.
And you know, sometimes I don't get over 10 miles an hour. All the way here, it is a crawl and a creep. Let us know your thoughts on this. GBviews at gbnews.com, because the irony is, of course, it's causing, guess what, more pollution.
And if it's not traffic, it's potholes. You're doing your car in, your suspension's getting snapped.
Yeah,
so.
It's really bad out there. So add it to the list of frustrations. Right, lots more this morning. First, though, your news with Sophia Wensler.
Thanks, Bev. Good morning. It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. First, some breaking news. A Met police officer, firearms officer, charged with the murder of Chris Cabba has been named for the first time as Martin Blake. The 24-year-old was shot once in the head through the windscreen of a car in South London in September 2022. The officer was initially identified only as NX121, but it was ruled the 40-year-old can now be named because it posed no real or risk to his life or his family. Protesters are set to demonstrate against the government's decision to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton. It comes 1 year on since plans to house asylum seekers at Scampton were revealed as the Home Office tried to reduce reliance on expensive hotels. Since then, West Lindsey District Council has been fighting the proposals to house migrants there, even taking legal action. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak has been accused of failing to stop migrant channel crossings after record arrivals topped 3,000 for the year so far. But Downing Street has insisted the government is making progress in stopping the boats. It comes as the UK has just pledged up to £1 million as part of a deal to get Libyans to return to their home country. London has become a no-go zone for Jews during pro-Palestine protests. That's a warning from the government's counter-extremism czar. It comes after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak warned forces are trying to tear the country apart. Writing in the Telegraph newspaper, Robin Simcox said Mr Sunak had been right to point to an increase in extremist disruption. Mr Simcox said now the policies are needed to meet the scale of the challenge and urged ministers to be bolder and be willing to accept higher legal risks when tackling extremism. Former Prime Minister Theresa May will stand down as an MP at the next general election. Mrs May revealed her decision to stand down as Maidenhead MP, saying she would focus on championing causes, including the fight against modern slavery. She had been the Conservative MP for the Berkshire seat since 1997. Treasury Secretary Gareth Davies is sad to see her go.
I'm so disappointed to hear this. She's somebody who's served this country with great skill and dedication, as you say, for many years. She's known around Westminster as somebody that is completely dedicated to her constituents despite the significant responsibilities that she's had in government. And I just want to pay tribute to her today for all that she's done, not just for her constituents, but for the country as well.
Now, MPs are warning Britain will be left increasingly reliant on military allies due to a £29 billion financial black hole in defence spending. The influential Public Accounts Committee warned the government currently lacked a credible plan to fund the Ministry of Defence. The gap between the MOD's budget and the cost of the UK's desired military capabilities is its largest ever at £16.9 billion. Labour said the report was more proof that the Conservatives had failed. The US will build a port on the coast of Gaza to deliver a supply of emergency aid. President Biden announced the plan in his annual State of the Union address last night. When completed in the coming weeks, a temporary pier will allow hundreds of lorry loads of food to be shipped daily. Officials have insisted US troops will not be deployed in Gaza, but will operate offshore during construction. Meanwhile, President Biden used his State of the Union speech to take a swipe at his Republican rival, Donald Trump. Biden said Mr. Trump sought to bury the truth about the 2021 January 6th attack on the US Capitol and also condemned his recent comments about Russia and NATO.
Former Republican president tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back.
Oh, right. It is 10:06 with Britain's Newsroom. You think I'd know what I was doing by now. On GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Ben Leo this morning.
Yes, lots of emails flying in, including one commenting on my experience in Australia about driving. It was very quick to get from Brisbane down the Gold Coast. Someone said, Australia is a big place, Ben. Yeah, I know, which is exactly my point. There's too many people here, too many cars on the road. So thank you for proving my point.
Oh, so many cars on the road. You've all been getting in touch about this NHS app. It's on the front page of the Times this morning. This is how the NHS is going to keep you alive because they're going to be watching what you're doing. And Neil has said, who in their right mind would install this NHS app? It starts with your step count, then your location, and then they will listen to your microphone. Jill says the NHS are so out of touch with health guidance, they can stick an app to track my steps where the sun doesn't shine. Ooh. And a lot of you are feeling the same way about this. Graham, I'm a 76-year-old veteran. If anybody calls me and tells me to get walking, well, God help them.
What if it's your mum? Always listen to your mum.
That's OK. If it's your mum, that's all right. But and do you know what? That's the perfect word to use because that's what the state is doing, becoming our parents. Stop parenting us. Admit that we're adults and we can make our own decisions of how many steps we want.
And also, you get people who say things like, well, I don't care about privacy because I've got nothing to hide. In actual fact, Edward Snowden has one of the greatest quotes ever. I love it. He says, saying that you don't care about privacy because you've got nothing to hide is like saying you don't care about free speech because you've got nothing to say.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense. It's stupid.
I want to show you something that one of our lovely GB News viewers gave to me in Whitehaven this week. He came up to me and he said, Bev, you've got to show this on your show. And this is some electioneering material. It's for an MP who wants a candidate for Labour in Southampton. And within the leaflet they put through the door, they put a little thing for you to put in your window that says, no thank you. If I hope you can see this. No thank you, no door sales or cold callers. All other callers will require proof of identification. And I think that is really chilling. In other words, you put this in your window, and then when the Conservative or Reform or Liberal Democrat or the Green candidate come and knock on your door...
No. I don't mind it. I think it's fairly shrewd.
Do you?
The only laughable thing about it is where it says... What does it say? All other callers will require proof of ID. Oh, isn't it great? Labour suddenly endorsing the idea of ID. They're against voter ID when it comes to elections, but...
Yeah. I think it's really sinister and really chilling. Do you know why? Because it's anti-democratic. If you want to vote in the election, if you're a confident candidate, you should be saying, stand on the doorstep, listen to what everybody has to say to you, and then decide where you put your vote.
I just think it's fairly shrewd bit of, political anchoring, a smart bit of, marketing. I don't think it's that sinister.
No. Well, anyway, thank you to the viewer. who came and gave it to me. Tell me what you think at home. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Right, moving on. It's been a year since plans to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton were leaked to the press as the Home Office tried to reduce reliance on expensive hotels. £8 million a day, I think the bill was at the time.
Well, now it's about £14 million
14
a day. Now, I know it's eye-watering. Well, since then, West Lindsey District Council and community groups have fought to prevent progress at this historic site. They say it puts a £3 million regeneration project at risk.
Yes, and despite the High Court ruling that the government plans were lawful, the people of Scampton are once again preparing to fight.
Let's go to see our reporter Anna Riley, who is there this morning. Good morning, Anna. Bring us up to speed with you on what's been happening in Scampton.
Good morning. Yes, well, we're here at RAF Scampton near Lincoln, the home of dam busters, and we're in a camp that's actually been set up by campaigners who say that plans to move 2,000 male asylum seekers to this area is the wrong place. 1 year on, and I'm joined now by Sarah Carter. You've been part of this campaign since that announcement was made. Why don't you think it's the right area?
Well, we have a £300 million regeneration deal that has been agreed literally 2 days before Sir Edward Lee announced the Home Office plans to, preserve the history and the heritage, but also be an investment to the local area. So £300 million of private money and, up to 1,000 jobs that are going to be created, as opposed to, having it being used as an asylum centre. It just doesn't make sense.
And what do you make to the Home Office saying that we can't keep spending taxpayer money putting up asylum seekers in hotels? It's costing millions.
Do what you say you're going to do and stop the boats. And you've been saying that, this hasn't just an overnight problem. It's been escalating for years, and by them not actually doing their job properly and stopping the boats, it's led to the situation that we're in now. So, it's not our place to have to sort that out. They should be doing that at source.
And the Home Office say that they have been working with people in Scampton, that they think this is the best plan, but you feel very unheard, don't you?
We have meetings. Okay, so they'll come and they'll lecture us. They'll tell us what the case is. We ask questions, and each meeting there's a different answer. So we have to keep asking the same questions to actually sort of keep up to speed. We don't get told anything that's going on just by an online newsletter that's updated now and again. And any questions that we have asked over any of the meetings, they don't actually come back to us with an answer. So yeah, we feel very sort of left in the dark.
And why are you so passionate about this campaign? I mean, this camp that we're in at the moment, you've set up, you've made meals here, you sleep in here. Why are you so passionate?
Well, it was actually set up by another campaign group. We took over a month ago when they left. But my husband has been living on the former Markle quarters for 29 years in June. I've lived here for 9 years. He's ex-RAF. He did 22 years. His dad did 27 years. And his dad was also on the barrage balloons during World War II. So we've got an investment in that history that we want to preserve, but also for our community, the jobs that it could bring. We're quite rural. We only get a bus every 2 hours. So to have something like this on our doorstep would be absolutely amazing for the locals.
And what are the next steps? I know you've not heard much, but what are the plans now 1 year on? Are you any further in knowing if this is going to become a camp for asylum seekers?
Well, the next step is for the Home Office to get a special development order to be able to have 3 years planning permission moving forward once Section Q runs out. So now it's about campaigning the MPs to sort of vote against it. So that's the next step.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So Sarah and many other campaigners gathering here today at RAF Scampton to get their voices heard and to show that they don't feel that this is the right site for up to 2,000 male asylum seekers to move into.
OK, thank you, Anna. Ben and I are sat here a bit baffled as to where you are. It looks like you're in an underground bunker, and you mentioned that it's a camp. Can you just tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, so the main entrance to RAF Scampton is just a couple of 100 metres next to us. By the side of the road, you can maybe hear road noise. There's lorries going by, cars going by. That's where the RAF base is, and this has been set up. We've got tarpaulin over the top. You can see in front of us we've got sofas set up. Behind us, I don't know if you can see, we've got there's a kitchen area. So it's a base for people to come in, to stay overnight, to keep warm, as well as a place to campaign today outside the RAF base.
OK, fascinating. Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anna.
To everybody down there in Scampton.
I think the concern with Scampton is that I think people in the community would be a lot happier if the migrants were contained to the camp and not allowed out into the community. But I gather that's probably a very controversial concept. Also, not least because of the health aspect. There was, I think was it TB or was it diphtheria outbreak at some point last year? So, yeah.
Right, still to come. It's International Women's Day. I'm feeling a little bit conflicted about it this year, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But also, should it include trans women today? We're going to be having a fiery debate about that in just a moment. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Should we put tobacco-style warnings on ultra-processed foods? Boris Johnson is calling on the government to do this. In his Daily Mail column, the former Prime Minister says that people don't know what they're feeding their families and there's too many extra ingredients. That's why I'm asking, should we put tobacco-style warnings on ultra-processed food? Well, joining me now to discuss, Steve Miller, former presenter of Fat Families, Helena Davidson, campaigner and policy expert at the Vegan Society. Right, so I'm going to start with you. Steve Miller, what do you think?
Oh, I'm applauding Boris today. Good on you, mate. And the reason for that is we know that the research on the warnings on cigarettes, I should say, when those warnings were visual, they worked very well. The second reason on a practical level is that we need to stop looking and listening before we start, grazing and putting things in the trolley. And the third thing is that these kind of signs, or these warnings, I should say, are kind of hypnotic. They trigger the emotion. So they're much more likely to get people to think and maybe resist.
Yeah, so at the Vegan Society, we're broadly in favour of increasing consumer knowledge when it comes to the nutritional value of people's food. But I think it's important to mention that ultra-processed food isn't an issue that's exclusive to vegans. And whilst most meat alternatives will fall into the ultra-processed food category, it largely depends on how we're going to look at how UPFs are going to be assessed, because vegan alternatives that fall under ultra-processed foods, they're actually, on average, healthier than meat products or ultra-processed foods that contain animal products. Really? So I think it depends on how we look at it. We might have to take a closer look at the nutritional profile of individual foods rather than the level of processing.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10:19 on Britain's Newsroom. Forgot where I was then. On GB News with me, Ben Leo, and Bev Turner. And we're joined by former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner in the studio, which is a very apt lineup on International Women's Day, surrounded by lovely ladies.
You can identify, Ben. That's fine.
Only at weekends,
We'll
Dawn.
accept you. It's nearly a weekend. It's
only
Friday. Come on.
weekends. Ben Jemima comes out in Soho.
That actually suits you.
What, Ben Jemima?
Yeah.
I could probably pass for it. I'd rather not, though.
Do we need it, though? Do we need International Women's Day, ladies?
We shouldn't do. We shouldn't need International Women's Day because all women should support one another all the time. The fact that we are expected to make a big deal of it on one particular day, I find a bit disturbing still. However, when we're living in an era where women's rights, I feel, Bev, are being spun backwards really fast, I feel like...
By who?
By men mostly and trans women. I feel like now... I am being told to sit down and shut up more than I was working as a young female journalist on a male-dominated newspaper back in the 80s.
Do you really? But who's...
Yes, I do.
So when you say you're being told to shut up, you mean you're being told...
Not literally,
that your rights are somehow less important than certain other minority groups?
Yes, I think female rights now have become almost like a game of trumps. My rights out-trump yours. Yeah. Everyone has rights. Everyone has human rights. Trans women have rights. Women have rights. No one's rights are greater than the other. But I feel now we are locked into, considering trans women want to be women, think they're women, are locked into this battle of sisterhood, and it shouldn't be that way.
No. Amy?
I do agree with Dawn. That
steady on, Amy.
Why does it take one day? Well, it should be International Women's Day every day, and the fact that we still have to have International Women's Day surely suggests that the inequality is still there. And, of course, the statistics do back that up, because it remains the fact that women can expect to earn 15% less than men. I think all the time about the medical misogyny that I see regularly, that women's health conditions don't have the research just because they didn't bother, because they only started researching reproductive things since about 1990, because it was all the male stuff. I think about when I got in the car today and I put my seatbelt on, and I have the knowledge that that seatbelt was designed for a man's body and not a woman's body.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Even everything is designed around
what's the name of the writer who drew real attention to that? Caroline Perez.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
There's a book on medical misogyny,
That's right.
And the whole world is kind of built around men. Even the fact that when you take a paracetamol, it takes into account the average male body weight rather than women's when it says the suggested dose.
Also, they do that with calories
like
as well, I think.
But yeah, they do.
Well, let me pick you up on a point that Dawn mentioned about women's rights being eroded by certain groups, including trans women, who you are a big supporter of. You are happy with trans women being in women's toilets, playing in women's sports. So, I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't say women's rights are being eroded, yet I support men playing biological sport.
I can't see any evidence of trans women eroding women's rights, but what I can see a lot of evidence is sort of trans women's rights being eroded by women. I see that a lot.
Amy, how can you say that about sport? I can give you just one example of sport. Leah Thomas, the male-born swimmer swimming in women's races. That is a cast iron
But Leah
example.
Thomas was playing in America in a college-level team, and the following year she was beaten by a cis woman. So it's not really fair.
Cis women.
You know what?
We're just women.
The thing that I find funny is people only care that when trans women play sports when they win. So it's the principle, they can play, but they can't win.
Amy, sorry, it's the safety aspect of it as well. How many videos and clips have we seen online of biological men playing women's sports, playing rugby, manhandling them, throwing them around? You wouldn't have
I haven't seen that many.
It does happen. Yeah, there was.
I've seen a lot of... But my son plays contact rugby, and I found that terrifying. That's got nothing to do with the gender of the
imagine
kids
you
he's
as a woman
playing
playing against rugby against a biological man.
I can't imagine
you can't
myself playing rugby, I have to say.
But you see, it does happen, and I think when you say, well, it only matters if they win, that's only when people are incensed. Yeah, because sport is about winning.
But they rarely win.
It really matters if a woman is beaten by a
Do you know
male-born
the
human being.
vanishingly small numbers of trans women who are even in sport? Because actually, they're very unlikely because of conversations like this. If you were a trans woman living in the UK now, would you want to go get into sport?
Good. I'd like you to do sport, absolutely,
you've got
but I
people
don't
playing
want you to go and
park run.
biological
You know,
born
people
women.
going along to park run to try and have a fun day, and now people are saying, oh, trans women shouldn't be allowed to that. So if you were a trans woman living in the UK now, would you feel welcome anywhere?
You talk about parkrun, but that's a fine example. The record holder in Aberystwyth, for example, in Wales, is a biological man who absolutely exceeds any records held by women.
But it's
and
not
do you know what parkrun did?
It's not a competitive
Do you know what parkrun did? They deleted all their records and said, look, we're gonna appease to this cheating, because that's what it is, by biological men, and we're going to scrap all records and ruin the fun for everyone.
I feel like you've never been to a park run. Because it's not competitive. It's innately not competitive.
I've played a lot of sport. I play probably more sport and I'm into more fitness than probably most people. And I understand the innate biology of biological men. It's not just about reducing...
I have a question then.
Hang on one second. It's not just about reducing testosterone once someone's gone through male puberty. They have more muscle mass, they have more lung capacity, bigger bone density. That stays with them for life.
I know all the arguments, but then...
I just find it ironic that you're here saying women's rights are being eroded, yet you are...
I don't say they've been eroded. I say they're stagnated.
But you're happy to...
They're not progressing as much as they could against men. And also, can I just put to you Caster Semenya? I always think of this example. Do you remember Caster Semenya?
Yeah, the runner. She's intersex.
Yes, and she has the bone density and the lung capacity and all the things that are levelled.
That's fine, because she wasn't a biological man.
But hang on a minute. How the makeup, the complexity of biology and human experience and condition can be in the form of someone like Caster Semenya. So why are you willing to accept her natural advantage?
She's a rare example.
Michael Phelps, massive wingspan, alien wingspan, some would say.
And he's a man and competes in the male races.
Is that unfair?
No, because he was born a man.
Because he was racing against men.
And trans people are born trans.
He wasn't racing against weaker, feebler women.
He was racing against weaker, feebler men who could never have his wingspan. So if your argument is that this whole biological difference...
While we're on this issue, can we have a look at a clip, actually? This is Labour's Angela Eagle, because we're talking about this from the perspective of a Conservative Party backdrop, Conservative government. So we often think, how would this issue play out under Labour? Well, we've got a little bit of an insight now as to what that might look like. Here you go. Here's Angela Eagle.
We'll also strengthen the law so anti-LGBT plus hate crimes are treated as aggravated offences, which is and there'll be a much-needed modernising of gender recognition processes, which are humiliating and...
So, effectively, Dawn, what Angela Eagle is saying is that trans rights are going to be further consolidated and further empowering to people under a Labour government.
Look, everybody has rights, right? Trans people should have rights, women should have rights, even men should have rights, and that hurts, believe me.
Thank you,
but even, not you, I didn't say you specifically, but even men should have rights. No one's rights trumps... I didn't really understand what Angela was saying there. There's a lot of words...
Sorry, it was a little brief.
No, but there was a lot of words she used. None of it really made much sense, to be honest with you. I'm slightly disappointed because I feel that she should be more pro-women. As I said...
Well, one of the things that she was saying there is that gender transitioning should be made easier and less humiliating.
It's about the gender recognition certificate, isn't it?
Yes.
And actually, this originated with who we're talking about a lot today, Theresa May. Theresa May thought this would be her gay marriage, her equal marriage moment, and she could be seen as a progressive politician with this whole trans rights progression. However, then it started to be used as the political football that we see it is used today. All the gender recognition certificate does is mean that your birth certificate, your marriage certificate and your death certificate will align with the gender in which you lived your life. And if it was open to abuse, that's also acknowledged, and if they'd be found to use fraudulently, then that's taken into consideration. And in the example of Spain, the GRC would be removed. So if you went to try and get a GRC, which is often the argument, a man could walk in and just say he's a woman, that's fraud. So that wouldn't work. And in Ireland, in Spain, they have this, and it works very, very well.
But it's interesting that you use the word fraud, because for me, so much of what we are being asked to do, and I can separate, I think, that no one wants to be unkind to an individual trans person.
No.
I don't want to see a world in which, as you say, trans people can't freely walk down the street and live their lives, because the vast majority just want to live a quiet life and get on with it.
We always get on with it, yes.
But being asked, if I am asked to look at man-born and male in a dress and say that is a woman. You're asking me to lie.
I think we're imagining such different things, aren't we? Like, I'm picturing Brianna Guy. I'm picturing Sean Fay. I'm picturing India Willoughby.
Well, India Willoughby is now threatening to go to the police because J.K. Rowling called him a man.
When you see her, do you honestly, in your heart, ever think man? Because I don't believe...
I see a trans woman.
I don't think that even matters.
Really, see a
India
woman?
Willoughby is asked...
And that's as simple as it is.
There's a difference. It's a trans woman and a woman, that's it. There's no cis women, by the way. We're women, OK? That's it.
But it's just a prefix, isn't it? We're blonde women, brown-haired women, broadcasting women, pretty women. Why see it so different?
Amy, I think you're missing the point by saying, does this person look like a real woman? That's not the thing here.
Everything about her is a woman.
The problem with India and J.K. Rowling is India Willoughby is threatening to censor the free speech and the biological reality and facts of human life by going to the police because she called him a man. Nothing to do with the appearance.
If you look at India's passport, there's an F. Every fibre of India's being is
Well, it isn't every fibre of her being. That's what's interesting.
No.
Professor Robert Winston, very famously said, your biological sex is identifiable in every single cell in your body.
That quote has been... It's been criticised. It's been...
chromosomally. You can't change your chromosomes.
I'm not sure this argument gets us anywhere, because India should never, in a million years, be treated as a male or called such.
I would treat her as a trans woman. It's a biological now.
What J.K. Rowling said is undeniably derogatory, and it was intended...
Calling them a man?
Ben, you know that that's intended to be derogatory. You just know it.
Well, sorry, but India's got a form himself of being abusive and doing the same to other people.
Why lower yourself to say himself? Why do that?
Because India Willoughby is a biological man, and I'm within my rights to say you are a man. I am not going to lie, Amy. I'm not going to lie to myself and distort my reality to make other people feel better.
It's really hateful.
Facts over feelings.
We do so many things to make people feel better all the time.
I support trans rights. I want people to live in a happy, loving, accepting, equal world.
You're a kind person. When I came in here, you said you liked this top, even though it's covered in cat hair. You know, see, you're a kind person.
But
you say lies to make people feel better.
But I'm not going to distort my own reality to make someone feel better.
That's not your reality. You're telling yourself a new reality to make yourself feel right in your argument.
Right.
So much of this is about language. And for me, India Willoughby is a trans woman, and it's those 5 letters that really matter. Because that matters to all of us because of the biology and because of your first point about medical testing. If we start including trans women in the medical testing, we are still losing because we are physiologically so different.
OK, fascinating. Right. Amy Nicole, Dawn, Neeson, thank you very much. Let's get your news with Sophia Wensler.
Thanks, Ben. It's 10:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The Met Police firearms officer charged with the murder of Chris Cabba has been named for the first time as Martin Blake. The 24-year-old was shot once in the head through the windscreen of a car in South London in September 2022. The officer was initially identified only as NX121, but it was ruled the 40-year-old can now be named because it posed no real risk to his life or that of his family. Appearing at the Old Bailey, he's pleaded not guilty to the charge. Protesters are set to demonstrate against the government's decision to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton. It comes 1 year after the plans were revealed as the Home Office works to reduce reliance on expensive hotels. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has been accused of failing to stop the boats, with Channel crossings topping 3,000 for the year so far. Downing Street insists the government is making progress. It comes as the UK pledges up to £1 million as part of a deal to get Libyans to return to their home country. And London has become a no-go zone for Jews during pro-Palestine protests. That's a warning from the government's counter-extremism czar. It comes after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak warned forces are trying to tear the country apart. Writing in the Telegraph newspaper, Robin Simcox said policies are needed to meet the scale of the challenge and urged ministers to be bolder and be willing to accept higher legal risk when tackling extremism. For the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
for stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value. Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2831 and €1.1733. The price of gold is £1,690 and 94 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,674 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Still to come this morning, we're going to get stuck into this scandal at Red Bull and Formula One. It's not going anywhere, this. It's more than just a sports story, this.
Yeah, it's going up a gear, excuse the pun. But yeah, it's definitely more than a sports story, especially on International Women's Day. Very apt, because I'd like to know whether women, and I'll ask you this, Bev, as well, whether Jerry Horner, Halliwell, was right to go to that Bahrain GP and publicly support her husband, who's involved in the scandal. But yeah.
Right, we're staying in the fast lane now. New GB News series, Innovation Britain, looking at the success of British manufacturing around the country. Here it is.
You want a great UK manufacturing story? Well, I've got one for you with Mark here at AW Engineering, and it's all to do with these fantastic parts. And the story began 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, we started dealing with this customer, as you say, 10 years ago when they were prototyping work and trying to develop a new product to the market. As they grew, they moved a lot of their production requirements to the Far East for cheaper production. We carried on dealing with them on a much smaller basis on still prototyping development work. But then during the pandemic, when they couldn't get supply from China of their products, they turned to us and asked us to see if we could do supply for them. We couldn't compete quite with price on what they were buying from the Far East, but then when you put in the entire price of component, including shipping, quality, turnaround and delivery and lead time, it actually works out better for them to buy the product from the UK, and they've actually made the decision to try and reshore much of their work in production terms back to the UK, and we're supporting them with that product.
Absolutely fantastic, and I think you're doing a great job at doing exactly that. What I've really learned from this, it's not so much price per part, but it's more price of the production that's made you win it.
Yeah, it's a total price of purchase, it's a total price of quality, making sure the product gets to them right first time, that they have availability for it, reaction time, you know, 12 weeks normally from the Far East, and we can produce in 12 hours if needed be, you know. So it's that relationship and having that clear line of communication.
Well done, Mark, and let's see more of this in the future.
I hope so.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Household energy bills will fall by £238 per year. Good news. An average of £20 a month. That's as Ofgem unveils its new energy price cap. So joining us in the studio is GB News economics and business editor Liam Halligan.
The Ofgem energy price cap, that's the regulated amount that energy suppliers are allowed to charge, will fall from £1,928 a year to £1,690. That's from April the 1st. That's a drop of about 12%. That should save the typical household 20 quid a month. Prices are cheaper than they were, but they're still very elevated by historic standards. Certainly if you're an American household, a French household, even a Spanish or an Italian household, you're paying a lot less for your electricity and your energy in general than you are here in the UK. The energy companies have been a bit tricksy with the government, because while they are lowering the energy price cap and the headlines are, well, your energy bills are coming down, blah, 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 the energy providers have actually chiselled out from Ofgem the permission to charge households an extra £2.33 a month on average. And the energy companies say that is money which they need, the energy companies, in order to support households who have got big debts on their energy bills. I don't know about you, but whenever I talk to people down the pub about energy bills, many of them say, well, the energy company's got like £2,000 of my money and it won't give it back to me. What's going on here? So there are lots of concerns about customer balances with energy companies, and it's also worth saying that as part of this announcement, the bit that no one will notice is that the energy companies are being able to charge all households to try and flatter the energy companies' balance sheets, which to me, on first reading, seems a bit odd.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Thank you to GB News viewers and listeners, because we've had some record numbers in the last week. And yesterday, we were the #1 news channel across the UK. Your favourite news channel.
Yeah.
What's the reaction that you get like on the streets now, Ben?
I was on a plane to Tenerife last week,
Oh, nice.
and I had two guys come up to me and they said, thank you, we love the show, love the channel. Thank you for speaking up for us, because we feel like we haven't got a voice, and if we do speak up, you know, you get called all sorts of names and so on. And I also had a neighbour up the road from me the other day. I bumped into her and was talking about the weather, and she said, oh, thank God the sun's out, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then she said, you look like that chap from GB News. I said, oh, it's funny that.
I find recently the response from people that we meet on the street. And do you know what people say about GB News? I've never had this before. I've worked for every other channel almost in the last 20 years. They say, we watch GB News all day, and that does not happen anywhere else, because we are news, but in the evening it's that close to entertainment. Remember that.
It's your channel as well. It is called the People's Channel for a reason, and I know it sounds corny, but it's true. And all the emails you send in are both of, you know, support and criticism on how we can improve. We take it all in.
We do.
And everything we do here is for you, as I said. We're giving you a voice. So thank you so much for tuning in your numbers, growing numbers.
Right, now, it's been a very hectic week in Westminster, of course. We had the spring budget.
Yes, but it's been criticised for having nothing new for Britain's armed forces, and has actually appeared to track a decline of £2.5 billion in defence spending.
So joining us now is Labour MP for Bootle, Peter Dowd. Peter, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. What did you make of the budget?
Not a lot, as Eric Morecambe would say. I think it was a transactional budget. I think it was a budget that was there to get the Tories across a particular line in advance of a general election. It was just pretty, lots of organisations. Institute of Directors said, for example, it was unremarkable in that regard.
What do you make of the lack of defence spending, especially at a time when we've got the Russia invasion of Ukraine, the situation in the Red Sea with the Houthi rebels? Not a penny for our armed forces.
Well, the thing is, with the defence of the front line starts on the home front in that regard. So, and what we've got problems with at the moment are issues maybe around recruitment and retention in the armed forces as well. Because to stay in any organisation or to be attracted to an organisation, you've got to believe that it's committed to you. And I think at the moment, the government are not sending the right messages out for people who we want to join the armed forces, that it's not so much it's not welcoming, it's got to be a place that you're committed to and you want to commit. You're committed by, so to speak, by the government.
And that particular issue, Peter, was brought sharply into focus when there was the public debate just a few weeks ago about whether we should have a sort of national service and whether we would need to have conscription again one day. And, of course, the younger generation took to social media and put hilarious memes about the fact that they wouldn't go and fight for this government. What would Labour do to create a country that the younger generation would literally die for?
Look, I think what you've got to do is you've got to have, for example, defence spending, which is commensurate with the needs of our country. But I go back to the point about it starts on the home front. So you've got to be paying people appropriately for a kick-off. You've got to know that they're secure for the future, that their pensions are reasonable, that the accommodation that they actually live in with their families when they are in the armed forces is important. So you've got to get those basics right. And that's the starting point for any armed forces, is that what is it like for you and your family if you're committing to 5 or 10 years in the armed services?
It is and it isn't, and I agree with you, and I would think all of our soldiers and all of our troops should be treated better when they're in service or when they've retired as well. But it's more than that, Peter. It's about, because, you know, World War I, World War II, we didn't have British male soldiers saying, well, I'll go in the army, but only if they give me a nice house. My point being that it's that passion in the hearts of the next generation to believe in this country. What would Labour do to encourage that?
I think personally, Bev, I think you're missing the point. What you've got, look, my grandmother was a war widow for 67 years, and my mother was a war widow for 49 years. She got a war widow's pension for 49 years. It's about sending the message that the armed forces are armed forces which are top notch in the world. They really are. They really are top notch. It's sending the message to them, to people who want to join. You're committed to us. We're going to be committed to you. It starts at home with all those sorts of things. And that issue about the abstract, about committed to your country, yes, of course people are, but they've got to be in an environment for them that it isn't all take and it isn't all give. It's a mix of both, and that's where it's got to start on the home front.
But it's about values as well, isn't it? That what
Yes.
would a Labour government? What would Britain look like under a Labour government? How can you define the characteristics that will be applicable to this amazing country that we have? What are the values you're going to represent? Because I'm very unclear about that.
Well, I tell you what the values are. Let's take a value. Is it right in this country that we have tens of thousands of food banks? Is that right? I don't think that's right. Is it right that we have warm hubs where people can't afford, have to go to be protected? Is that the sort of country that we want? No, it isn't. So what we want is we need investment, stability and social cohesion in our country. We need investment from the government. We need investment from the private sector, a partnership between the private and public sector to make sure our country has the productivity levels and the growth levels it needs to look after everybody in the country. That's what we need. That's the environment. That's what I want to do, and that's what people, in a sense, want. Whether you're in the armed forces or not, that's what we all want. Don't we want a decent, cohesive country to live in?
We do.
And I don't think we have, with all the regional variations, all the regional economic variations, the health variations right across the country. That's where you start to make sure that people are cared for and looked after, whether you're in work or whether you're not in work.
Yeah. All right, Peter, just changing the topic slightly, what's your thoughts on International Women's Day? Are you a big supporter? Do you think we even need it?
Well, yes, I am a big supporter of International Women's Day. So, for example, women, even in this country, are still paid well below the male average. So we have to keep the whole question about the rights of women on the agenda. It isn't just about, the old-fashioned suffragette movement. It's about making sure that women get a fair crack of the whip, so to speak, and that they're getting a fair deal from who they're employed by.
OK.
For example.
Peter, thank you so much. Really enjoyed talking to you. Labour MP for Bootle there, Peter Dowd. What did you make of what he had to say there?
He was talking about the allure of people joining the armed forces, but, when the RAF discriminate against white pilots and they have to apologise about it for being racist, basically, how are you expecting British people to feel that affinity with protecting their country?
Girl, let us know your thoughts. GBviews at gbnews.com. Up next, Christian Horner of Red Bull fame.
Love this.
Well, his sexting accuser, the woman who accused him, who took the complaint to the team, she has been suspended. Did Red Bull make the right move, especially on International Women's Day? That and a lot more. This is Britain's Newsroom.
Hello there, good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on, quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day though than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England too, but across northwestern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain though will come and go for more southern areas with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Well, we're looking at the pictures of Christian Horner and his Mrs. Jerry on the front pages of all the papers still. This sex and motorsport scandal story is going nowhere. We're joined in the studio by Aidan McGee to let us know what the latest is. This is sort of nightmarish for the family, Aidan, isn't it? But also for the Red Bull team.
Well, it is. And, I mean, first of all, I can't remember the last time I've in a major way seen F1 on the back pages of the newspapers.
Because there's been so little happening on the track. It's so processional since that massive war on the track between Hamilton and Verstappen 2.5 years ago. So to see it on the front page is almost uncharted territory, certainly for the first time in a long while. He wants to draw a line under things. Wouldn't it be nice if every time we got into a bit of trouble, we could just say to the media, you know, you can just move on now. There's nothing to see here. So you can understand his position. What's turning now, though, Bev, is that the sponsors are starting to get involved. And when the sponsors start getting nervous, that's when the end is nigh. I don't think he'll be in his position for that much longer. Now, what's interesting is that Red Bull's engine partner, Honda, yes, OK, it sounds like a bit of a small-time role in terms of the sponsorship, but they're a big company, they're a global company, and they're starting to say we need to hear more detail on this. And so questions are beginning to be asked, and that's when the net closes in, because this is a hugely commercialised sport. It's enormous around the world. If you're associated with it, and you're looking at it even dispassionately or from a distance and thinking, you know what, this one bloke is a boil that needs to be lanced. And you know what, if he's not a major investor in the company, he's an employee, and I think they might decide to dispense with him.
Bev, on International Women's Day, what do you make of Jerry Halliwell Horner, as she's now known, his Christian Horner's wife, turning up to the Bahrain GP last weekend, a day after all those leaked messages, well, apparent messages, were leaked, to show public support for Horner? Was she weak? Is that the right thing for her to do, in your opinion?
I hate being psychic, but I'd said on Twitter in the morning that my prediction would be that she would put on her best frock and she would walk out and she would hold his hand and she would kiss him, and it's exactly what she did.
There is a subplot to this. Don't forget there's a Netflix documentary being filmed at the moment.
Of what?
Of about life at Red Bull, really.
Really?
It's called... I can't remember what it's called. It's got quite a fancy name, but...
I'm not that psychic. I didn't see that coming.
It's good. It's good content. I remember when Tottenham had this a couple of years ago when Amazon did a documentary. The great content was the managers were getting sacked all the time. There was upheaval, and they need that to generate a decent narrative within the context of the series, and so it helps. I'm not saying that it's all been contrived, but she needed to be there, I believe that.
Well, and the accuser has been sacked now.
Yes.
We don't know what, but that will no doubt be rolling on over the weekend. Aidan, thank you so much. Here is Annie with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It will be a dry afternoon for many areas with some sunshine, but there's a relatively brisk easterly breeze for many areas. That's as this area of high pressure across Scandinavia still brings in that easterly wind. Further south, though, we'll start to see low pressure arriving, bringing some weather fronts and some rain for the weekend. But that easterly breeze across northeastern areas will continue to drag in cloud and some drizzly rain through the next few hours. Further south, though, parts of the southeast, it'll be a much sunnier and brighter afternoon compared to yesterday, so it will feel a little bit warmer in the sunshine, but that easterly wind will bring a chilly feel for many areas. Through tonight, the cloud will thicken from the south and west as this band of showery rain pushes up to cover many southern coasts by tomorrow morning. Further north, though, it should stay dry, but it will be quite a cloudy and windy night. So that does mean it will be frost-free by the start of the weekend, but it's still going to be a fairly chilly start. The winds will be a bit stronger through Saturday compared to today, particularly across northwestern areas as the winds are squeezed over the high ground. So quite a gusty afternoon, but it will be dry and bright for many western areas of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland and northwestern England. But further south, cloud will thicken through the day and there'll be some showery outbreaks of rain. These could turn quite heavy across the southwest in the afternoon, but it will still feel fairly pleasant in any brighter breaks. See you later on. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 11 a.m. on Friday, March the 8th. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and Bev Turner, Britain's favourite news channel.
Thank you for watching at home and listening on the radio. So, a new NHS app is going to monitor your step count. That's right. And then it will tackle your unhealthy lifestyle. It's going to get you back to work. Are you a fan? We're not.
Maybe just eat less, perhaps. Meghan's UK relaunch. The Duchess of Sussex looks set to hire British PR gurus to improve her popularity here in Blighty.
Good luck with that. And no-go zone for Jews. That's how the counter-extremism czar describes London with the ongoing pro-Palestine protests. Do you agree with him?
And the former Prime Minister Theresa May will stand down as an MP at the next general election. She's represented the Maidenhead constituency for 27 years.
And Britain is grinding to a halt. Average speeds on our roads are at their slowest for almost a decade because of roadworks and those very annoying smart motorways. What's your biggest bugbear on the roads? What is the possibility that Meghan Markle can revive her character and her PR image here, do you think, Ben Leo?
I think she's probably finished. And the problem is, Brits, compared to Americans, we see through people and we judge them by the content of their character. Whereas I think the Americans, bless them, they're very generous with their, you know, hospitality.
And I'm sort of baffled as to why she wants us to fall in love with her again. Why? Like, she caused chaos with her husband amongst the royal family, and then she's gone back to America. And I kind of think if she needs to revive her image here, do something. Just do something good. Don't tell us how wonderful you are by a PR company. Come over here and do some good. Do you agree? gbviews@gbnews.com. First, though, the very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Bev, Ben, thank you. It's 2 minutes past 11. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Your top story this hour. Met Police firearms officer Martin Blake has denied the murder of Chris Cabba after being named publicly for the first time. The 24-year-old was shot once in the head through the windscreen of a car in South London in September 2022. The officer was initially identified as NX121, but it was ruled the 40-year-old can now be named because it poses no real risk to his life or that of his family. He's been released on bail and is due to face trial in October. Protesters are again demonstrating against a decision to house asylum seekers at RAF Scampton. It comes a year after the Home Office plans were revealed as the government works to reduce its reliance on expensive hotels. West Lindsey District Council launched legal action against the proposal, and Conservative councillor Robert Patterson says the fight will continue.
We've got a legal stop order in place, which the Home Office are ignoring. They're not doing the porter cabins, but they are building on the accommodation blocks. and they've been doing it openly in breach of the stop order for months. We've lost the judicial review, but we've been able to appeal the judicial review. So we're going to appeal the judicial review, and the council's also going to launch another legal challenge.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has been accused of failing to stop the boats, with Channel crossings topping 3,000 for the year so far. Downing Street insists the government is making progress. It comes as the UK pledges up to £1 million as part of a deal to get Libyans to return to their home country. Former Prime Minister Theresa May will stand down at the next general election, bringing her 27-year career as an MP to an end. Announcing her decision to stand down as the member for Maidenhead, she said she wants to focus on causes, including the fight against modern slavery. She's been the Conservative MP for the Berkshire seat since 1997. Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, Gareth Davies, is sad to see her go.
I'm so disappointed to hear this. She's somebody who's served this country with great skill and dedication, as you say, for many years. She's known around Westminster as somebody that is completely dedicated to her constituents, despite the significant responsibilities that she's had in government. And I just want to pay tribute to her today for all that she's done, not just for her constituents, but for the country as well.
The counter-extremism czar has warned London has become a no-go zone for Jews during pro-Palestine protests. Writing in The Telegraph, Robin Simcox said the Prime Minister was right to point to an increase in extremist disruption. He says policies are needed to meet the scale of the challenge and urged ministers to be bolder and be willing to accept higher legal risk when tackling extremism. MPs are warning Britain will be left increasingly reliant on military allies due to a £29 billion financial black hole in defence spending. The influential Public Accounts Committee warned the government currently lacked a credible plan to fund the Ministry of Defence. The gap between the MOD's budget and the cost of the UK's desired military capability is its largest ever at £16.9 billion. Labour said the report was more proof that the Conservatives had failed. The UK will join the US and other allies to create a maritime corridor to deliver aid directly to Gaza. The Foreign Secretary made the announcement after President Joe Biden said during his annual State of the Union address that the US will build a port in Gaza to deliver a supply of emergency aid. When completed in the coming weeks, a temporary pier will allow hundreds of lorry loads of food to be shipped daily. Officials have insisted US troops will not be deployed to Gaza but will operate offshore during construction. Meanwhile, President Biden used his State of the Union address to take a swipe at his Republican rival, Donald Trump. Biden said Mr. Trump sought to bury the truth about the 2021 January 6th attack and also condemned his recent comments about Russia and NATO.
Former Republican president tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ben and Bev.
Very good morning. It's Britain's Newsroom with me, Bev Turner, and Ben Leo this morning. Should we have a little look at what people have been saying at home, Ben?
Yes, Rob. Good morning, Rob. You say, I'm getting sick and tired of trans women muscling their way into things that are of no concern to them. Trans women are not women and they already have their own day on the 31st of March.
And Judith says trans women and men are absolutely fine, but real biological women must not be deleted. Virginia says only biological women should be included in Women's Day. Audrey says to all women, you are enough just the way you are. And lots of you saying that you're enjoying Ben and I together this morning.
Are you going to read that tweet out?
Well, I did get one tweet from someone called Ange. It says, oh, Ange, I mute the TV every time that woman's on. This is talking about me. It's not very sisterly, is it? I literally can't bear to listen to the garbage that comes out of her mouth. A vile woman.
Oh.
Andrew Pearce, is that you masquerading as Ange?
Oh, Bev, sorry.
I bet it is.
On International Women's Day as well.
Vile, that's an Andrew Pearce word. I think he's sat at home tweeting. Right, but Andrew and I will be back on Monday morning. OK, so Labour have been outlining their strategies to protect LGBT community this morning. This is what Angela Eagle had to say.
Labour will offer the country to pick up legislating to protect the LGBT community with a comprehensive trans-inclusive ban on conversion therapy. I would have liked to get it done sooner. It will happen. We just have to make progress, and it's very sad that, as honourable friend said, it's taken longer than the Brexit negotiations.
Well, Michael Walker from Novara Media joins us now to talk about that and other issues as well. I feel like we've got a little bit of a clearer idea now, Michael. No major surprises there about the fact that the rights of trans people would be further consolidated under a Labour government?
Potentially. I mean, I think it's not going to be a big issue in the next general election. I think there are sort of certain spheres within the media, and I mean, I think the Tories would quite like it to be a big issue at the next general election. But ultimately, going into this, it's going to be about people realising that NHS services have declined. There's these enormous waiting lists. People's incomes haven't risen for about 20 years now. So, you know, there will be certain people within the Conservatives that want to make this a massive talking point in this general election. I think Labour will probably be doing everything in their power to avoid it.
Why would the Conservatives want this to be a big issue?
Well, because they think it's an issue that the country is somewhat divided on, and they think their sort of base is somewhat divided on it. So I think they prefer to be talking about issues that they think are as more unifying.
I mean, isn't that what political parties should be doing, talking about things that their voters are concerned about?
Yeah, no, I'm
not a bad thing.
It's not a critique.
Yeah.
I'm saying this is perfectly reasonable. Angela Eagle, there, a backbench MP, I think,
she is
at this point.
MP, yeah.
So, I mean, you know, I know that there are lots of people who would hope that the Labour Party will have a more positive attitude, let's say, towards trans people and trans rights, but I don't think we're expecting them to put it sort of top line in their manifesto.
I mean, are we going to get a situation where J.K. Rowling this week said that India Willoughby was a man, and India said that he'd reported her to the police for it? Are we going to get a situation under Labour where, actually, by doing what J.K. Rowling did and stating biological fact, that will end you up in the cop shop and potentially in court?
Well, I mean, people disagree about sort of the biological bases of transness, but I don't want to get into that right now. In terms of where policy would lie on this, I can't imagine that happening. And for me, the priority for me isn't really having politicians who are willing to police what people say. My priority is not having politicians who seem to proactively want to create divisive debates such as these, which, let's face it, you know, most of us aren't experts on. There are people who know a lot about this, and in a way, I prefer to leave it to them.
Let's move on then. People's poll. GBNews have done a poll here, and it's revealed that a staggering 44% of viewers do not trust a Tory or a Labour government to lower taxes after the next general election. Even Conservative voters from 2019 have moved away from Rishi Sunak's government, 45% saying that neither party will lower taxes. 36% have little strength in either of them, improving little faith that either of them will strengthen the economy. This is going to go one of two ways. We're either going to get lots of people spoiling their ballots, voting for independence, or just not voting at all. And I think that's the worst of all worlds, don't you?
I mean, potentially. I mean, we are in a situation, though. It's not like sort of the general public are saying, God, we really don't want either of them. I think the majority of the public are saying, we kind of want Labour, but we're not that excited about it. You know, they're at 46% in the polls. They're going to do OK. It might, in fact, be a landslide. Now, the worry will be, what do they do when they're in power? Because I think they've made, in a way, a bunch of somewhat inconsistent pledges. They've said they're going to improve funding for public services. They're not going to tax more, and they're not going to borrow more. Now, that's a difficult square to circle, right? But I don't think we're yet at a point where we're talking about sort of mass despondency at this next general election, because I think there is, in a way, you know, even if not enthusiasm for Keir Starmer as a person, I think there is some enthusiasm just for change in general.
What's the best case scenario for the Conservatives now? Damage limitation?
Well, I think they are doing damage limitation. I'm not a psephologist. I'm not going to sort of pluck a number out of the air. But I think that budget, I mean, in a way, I'm surprised that budget was so small c conservative, because, you know, cutting national insurance by 2p, they already did that last autumn, and no one noticed. Like, I'm a political journalist, and I'd forgotten that. Yeah. You know, when I sort of heard on the radio, what, they'd already done this, and then they've done it again, and they're hoping this is going to turn it around for them. So they don't seem to have much of a strategy. In a way, I'm wondering if Rishi Sunak has already got his eye on a job in California. Jeremy Hunt wants to sort of go down as a responsible chancellor, so they've sort of given up on the next election already.
Nick Clegg, of course, went to Facebook.
I mean, it's been a great career move for him, losing that election in 2015.
Absolutely. It is the training ground for the technocrats, isn't it, it feels. But does that budget for you indicate we're looking at a May election? Because having said categorically, I've sat at this desk and saying definitely not in May. Now the mood music is that it was preparing people for a May election. They don't want reform to get more organised, let's say, before May. And they're just thinking we might as well. That's not a great reason to go for an election, is it?
Well, I mean, these are also, you know, people with human psychology. And, you know, the amount of time you know someone where they're inevitably going to break up with their partner and they'd be better to do it sooner rather than later. But obviously, they leave it a little while in case something comes up. You know, maybe there'll be some sort of, you know, something released about Keir Starmer that suddenly changes everything. So I think they will probably be sort of pushing it out for as long as possible in the hope that something comes up, even knowing that, you know, the most likely situation is they get
We were just waiting for that big rabbit out of the hat, weren't we? And I think it was such a damp squib budget. That suggests to me that it will be later in the year, so he can maybe announce something proper in the autumn statement. Just a quick word on International Women's Day. Do you think it's a good idea? Is it a good thing? Thoughts?
Yes. Love it. But no, I mean, I suppose the history of it is important. I can talk about the history of it. So it sort of came out of actually socialist movements in North America and Europe. Then it was adopted by the Soviet Union. But it was sort of very much in favour of women's suffrage. So it sort of was started with a big purpose. And I think there are still lots of people and feminists who would say it still really does have a purpose because we still don't have equal rights for women in this country. We do sort of politically, but in terms of, you know, deep equal rights.
I think we're going to need an International Humans Day eventually, Michael. I don't know about you, because it feels like the one thing that is against all of us is actually our tech, our apps. I feel like we're going to need a sentient human day.
I think if we're only getting one day a year, we're going to be in some real big problems if the AI gets the other 364. Although I suppose you could say that same critique about International Women's Day. How come the men get to have the other 364?
Do we have an International Men's Day yet?
I think there is.
We do, don't we?
I think there's so many XXX Day that you just lose track of them and they're pointless.
Yeah.
And also,
it's good for the calendar industry.
I caused a bit of controversy earlier because I was saying that actually the most vocal male feminists always turn out to be the biggest creeps. So I'm not going to go around, you know... International Women's Day is every day for me. My wife, my mum.
19th of November is apparently International Men's Day. Are you a feminist?
Yeah, probably. I would like to say I don't think any
creep?
I don't think any political movement has a monopoly on creeps.
This is true.
Well, you'll be honestly do some research into very vocal male feminists, and you'll see that actually they're some of the biggest female predators going. And that's not just some like off the cuff.
But it's okay. But I think it's okay to be a feminist. I think you're a feminist.
Well, what does it mean to be a feminist?
It just means you would believe in equal opportunities for men and women. In that case, you're a feminist.
No, because it's been hijacked by sort of man-hating militant...
That's a bit of a passé thing to say. That's what people said in the 1970s.
This is what I was going to say. I would say that actually in the 70s we had a much more sort of militant feminist movement then. A lot of it was built upon kind of lesbian commentators as well at that time. And, you know, women were
They also
literally
achieved
burning
important
their bras.
things, by the way. You know, it's important not to sort of dismiss that particular movement. But that was a movement which was a bit more hostile towards men than I think sort of modern-day feminism.
Yeah, I don't think we've moved on quite as much as we'd like to, but we all have to come together because, as I say, the threat to our future is not men versus women, it's robots versus us. And any minute now, AI will be on the phone to say, I want an International AI Day. Right, thank you so much, Michael Walton from Navarro Media. Still to come this morning, we're going to be reflecting on a very animated US president, Joe Biden.
Had a few too many coffees, I think, hadn't he?
Well, they definitely upped his medication, it seems. He pulled no punches about Donald Trump overnight. Stay tuned for that.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Absenteeism. And parents whose children miss a week or more of school face increased fines in a government drive to tackle absence.
This is another one of those government policies which has done nothing to improve the education of our children. In fact, since this was originally introduced some 10 years ago, the educational standards for our children, the 11-year-olds who can't read when they go up to primary school, have got worse and worse and worse. So it's not working. So what do? They just increase the fine, like that may make it work. Most of the parents who get fined are taking their kids out so they can take them on a holiday before the holiday companies push the prices up. And frankly, as a parent, if I've got a £600 discount on my holiday versus a £60 fine, I'm going to go for the £60 fine.
You'll suffer the fine.
Yeah.
let's not forget the other huge absence that children had recently during COVID. Schools were closed for months and months on end. Online learning was really not making up for that. So how could, it's very difficult for the government to say it was fine for us to take your kids out of school for months, but if you take them off for a few days to go to Disneyland, then you are the worst parent ever and you should
But also,
be
it's the pandemic that caused some of the problems with absenteeism now.
Absolutely.
Because the mental health issues that some of these children now have.
And there are tens of thousands of children, they call them ghost children, that have simply disappeared from the school register. So it would be nice. It's really, really scary situation. I'm not saying that the government is, taking great measures.
Well, I think one of their plans is to have a national register, which would help with that.
Which would definitely help. But I think they can't deal with the real problem, so they're going after actually perfectly, decent parents who are just taking the odd day off, to save money, frankly.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:20. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and Bev Turner. Britain's favourite news channel, nonetheless.
Officially.
Yeah. Thank you very much again to you viewers for supporting us. Very much appreciated. Now, let's go across the pond. Last night, American President Joe Biden took aim at his Republican rival Donald Trump during his State of the Union address, and this is not to be missed. He was highly charged on coffee, I suspect, to Congress. Take a look at this.
Former Republican president tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
Also facing accusations of being too old, Mr. Biden hit back at his critics.
I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserve to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now. I'm optimistic.
Right, there we are. We're joined now by former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Dawn, that was a uncharacteristically energetic performance.
He was very in playground fighting mode, wasn't he? I mean, sort of like, it's not the State of Union, it's a unionist state, isn't it? You know what, Ben? I think American politics do us a huge favour because they only exist to make our politics look sane. It's a very, very low bar, very low bar. But I just think, out of all the people in America, what is the population of America? It's a lot. It's a lot of people. How are we down to these two? I know technically how we're down to these two, by the way, but really? I mean, look, I mean, Trump and Biden, and it's like rock and a hard place. But I would be watching that as an American last night thinking...
330 million people, Dawn.
I know.
And that is all they can...
Nearly as many as you said this morning.
Nearly as many what?
Viewers as you said this morning.
Almost
doing
as many
brilliantly.
GB News this week across the channel. Thank you very much for watching. Amy, it's bleak, isn't it? When you look at... I mean, his face is almost completely frozen now, Joe Biden, because they've obviously injected him with so much Botox and cosmetic surgery. He's try and convince people that he's younger than he is.
I think he did all right there. Didn't you feel quite proud of him, considering recent occurrences? Although I do wish he was still holding that ice cream, to be honest. That was cute.
That wasn't... yeah, but the thing is, we shouldn't be looking at him like a grandfather that we're proud of.
No, I agree. But the thing that I take from this is and I think this applies to actually all politics, I'm really sick of politicians always talking about what the other side aren't doing or should be doing. Why can't politicians just stand up and say, hello, this is my plan, my ideas, and do you like them, rather than constantly depending on criticising the other side? I think it's not productive, and it applies to here as well. I've been thinking it all week. You know, you watch Prime Minister's questions, and you just see them playing insult ping pong, and I'm not sure it really demonstrates what their actual policies are. We don't know. Biden's got a great policy today. You know, what he said about Gaza and the aid getting in. Why didn't he just say proudly what that is, instead of taking the opportunity to...
Well, he's not got a good policy on the southern border. He's just letting uncontrolled mass migration... But, you know, that southern border story I thought was interesting, because I was saying to Dawn in the break, they bundled two very different bills together, didn't they? So they put Ukraine aid with the southern border stuff, so that they could play politics and go, look, you didn't put that through, when actually they weren't even really related. Dawn,
because it's all politics.
Who would be the best for the West and the UK in terms of president? Donald Trump? Boris Johnson wrote a column in the Mail saying that Trump was needed for peace in the West.
Who would I rather have leading my country? This isn't even a political decision. I would probably say Donald Trump, because I do think, not for the politics, but I think he's more... got more of his faculties intact. And I don't mean that in a horrible way. I mean, I do feel for Biden.
Well, Trump was the first no-war president. He was the first president to meet North Korean leader in the demilitarised zone. Biden, meanwhile, he oversaw the absolutely diabolical evacuation of Afghanistan. Russia invaded Ukraine. President Xi Jinping.
And the migration policy. What's really interesting, Ben, is that at the moment there's a huge swathe of blacks for Trump and Hispanics for Trump.
Didn't he make that with AI, though? That picture this week of Donald Trump.
I was listening to an interview with a real-life black person.
But he did mock one up with AI.
He probably did. I mean, who knows if we're even real, Amy?
Yeah.
But I mean, they were saying that sort of like, you know, certainly the Hispanic vote, the border issue, they worked hard, they got their green card there legally, and they feel very, very strongly that Biden's letting them down by having a more open border policy.
Can we talk about issues closer to home? And there won't be a viewer watching this who isn't frustrated by the state of the roads, whether you're a driver or just a regular passenger, or you sit on the bus trying to get past traffic roadworks and traffic lights. Dawn, it's now official. We've got slowest average speed of a car in 2023 in the UK. On major A roads, 57 miles an hour.
Yeah, I know. Well, who knew? I mean, sort of like major A roads and smart roads. It's like they're constantly being dug up, but there's no one actually doing any digging. There's no one doing any digging. That's what I can't understand. Our roads are a nightmare. I mean, even main roads in London now, Bev, are full of potholes. I mean, it's just like, you know, you can't drive over 20 miles an hour in London now in any case, otherwise you get shot or something or other. But it's, you know, trying to drive in this country. I don't actually drive. I've given up driving because I live in London, and it's absolutely pointless. But it's so frustrating now. I mean, there is... everyone goes, oh, it's not a war on the motorists. There is a war on the motorists.
There is.
It really is.
Amy, there's just too many people here, isn't there?
I don't think it's that. I think it's that the roads aren't being maintained. Like, there's too many roadworks, too many potholes. The link to smart motorways, I think, is interesting, because smart motorways were deemed so dangerous that a group of coroners wrote a letter to the National Highways Agency to say we need to have a word about these, because they're death traps.
Let's explain, sorry to interrupt, but just if people are watching and they're not sure what a smart motorway is, of course, it's one of those motorways which has no hard shoulder, so there's no runoff area if you get into difficulties, and it has the digital screens at the top of the motorway, and if there's a big red cross in it, you're not allowed to go in that lane. It depends on those in a watch centre watching and putting a cross on.
And they changed the speed limit, don't they, to
There's
try
been
and encourage the
so
traffic
many
to go
accidents. But you know, when you say about the speed, what's the speed, the average speed? 57.
57
I'm
on
like,
major A roads and motorways.
why can't we just go a bit slower? Most accidents...
We can't go any slower, Amy.
At speed. So I've always thought this. There are so many deaths on the road. It's like one of the most common ways to be injured in the UK. But we just insist on going fast, and I don't ever understand properly why.
Well, because that's what cars do.
Yeah,
they go fast, and that's
just get there a little bit later.
But most A roads and motorways don't have loads of pedestrians wandering up the side of them, do they?
Motorways, traditional motorways are actually statistically the safest road you can drive on, even though you can go faster. So it's not about speed.
All right, Jeremy Clarkson, I don't know.
Well, it's true. I mean, that's...
I just always think, why do we have to go so fast? When people are like, oh, I want to go 80 miles an hour.
Well, have you seen how slow the 20-mile-an-hour zones are? Have you seen how you absolutely crawl at snail's pace?
But I cycle everywhere, right, because it's apart from the potholes. I actually get flashed on my bike for going over... You know, there's slow down, you're going too fast.
Yeah.
I'm on a push bike.
And you're going over 20 miles an hour.
The speed camera gets you on your bike?
Yeah. Obviously, you know, the ones that flash and sort of like say, slow down.
Well, talking of Big Brother, should we talk about the fact that the way that the government is going to save all of our lives and make the NHS a wonderful beacon of healthcare across the world, Amy, is to monitor us with an app. What a surprise. Who saw that coming? Because now your doctor will know how many steps you've taken if you download the app.
Well, they won't, will they? Because no one can see their doctor. I think this is the government... I've seen these waiting lists. They've seen everyone's massive dissatisfaction with the NHS, and they're thinking, oh, we need to be seen to be doing something. So they've almost got a tiny, tiny little plaster and just put it over the massive gaping wound that is people's health. Because how many economically inactive people are there at the moment?
9.3 million.
Right, and I don't really think that counting their steps is going to make much of a dent
Dawn,
on that, which is the ultimate goal, is it not?
Have you got any concerns about civil liberties here and what this will mean further down the line?
I don't want the government monitoring anything I do at the moment. I don't want them... I wouldn't trust them to run a bath, let alone the country. So, you know, the fact that they are monitoring how far I walk in a day and where does that end? I mean, what are you eating? How many calories are you having?
What drugs are you taking?
Yeah, exactly.
What drugs are you taking because you are being forced to take that drug as well?
Yeah, how much are you drinking? Yeah, they'll get up.
I would concede, though, that we probably do all need to take... Well, I speak for myself, really. I don't know about you guys. I need to do more steps. So maybe I would like this, but I just don't like the implication that it will solve a massive problem.
Amy, you don't need to do any more steps. And you don't need... But you know that yourself. You don't need an app pinging up saying, oh, my God, you've got to walk more steps. That's
See,
ridiculous.
I've always wanted a fitness tracker. So when I saw this story, I thought, is this not just kind of a doctor-sponsored fitness tracker? You know, maybe.
No, it's not just that.
No,
Use your imagination, Amy. You have to work out where this goes. This is about conditional healthcare, conditionally based on your lifestyle, and that is chilling.
And Bev, how much is it costing?
Billions.
Yeah, because if they look at my insurance, if I go for insurance and then they take this data and then my premium goes up.
That's exactly what's going to happen, Amy.
We've all slammed this idea, but the actual problem behind it is the fact there's 9.3 million people of working age who aren't working, either through sickness or just choosing they just can't be bothered.
I think very few can't be bothered.
Well,
that's always an over-exaggeration.
Right, thank you, ladies. Dawn and Amy there. Up next, Sophia Wensler has the news. Don't go anywhere, lots more to come.
Thanks, Bev. It's 11:30. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Met Police firearms officer Martin Blake has denied the murder of Chris Cabba after being named publicly for the first time. The 24-year-old was shot once in the head through the windscreen of a car in South London in September 2022. The officer, who was initially identified as NX121, has been released on bail and is due to face trial in October. The counter-extremism czar has warned London has become a no-go zone for Jews during pro-Palestine protests. Writing in The Telegraph, Robin Simcox said policies are needed to meet the scale of the challenge faced and urged ministers to be bolder and willing to accept higher legal risk when tackling extremism. The UK will join the US and other allies to create a maritime corridor to deliver aid directly to Gaza. The Foreign Secretary made the announcement after President Joe Biden confirmed the US will build a port off the Strip in the coming weeks. A temporary pier will allow hundreds of lorry loads of food to be shipped daily. Former Prime Minister Theresa May will stand down at the next general election, bringing her 27-year career as an MP to an end. Announcing her decision, the member for Maidenhead said she wants to focus on causes such as the fight against modern slavery. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2833 and €1.1734 euros. The price of gold is £1,690 and 32 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,657 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Welcome back. A cracking Good Afternoon Britain coming up with the one and only Tom and Emily. What's in store for our lovely viewers?
Thank you for the support. It is going to be a cracking show, actually. I wonder what you think, Ben, about and Bev, Ben and Bev.
I know, it's got a ring to it.
A ring to it, it does indeed. What you make of the possibility of a Meghan Markle PR blitz in Britain?
I don't hate Meghan Markle. I just kind of think, just go away. No one's interested. And, you know, she's been proven to bend the truth on more than one occasion. Here's a story for you. In 2013, I think it was, she went onto the roof of a Kensington bar, sank Prosecco with the Daily Mail's showbiz editor, Katie Hine, and said, please, Katie, get me some column inches in the showbiz spread that I'm being linked to Ashley Cole, the then, I think he was at Chelsea footballer.
Yes, well, she needs to climb the ladder, and it's worked.
That's fine, I get it.
International Women's Day.
In her interview with ITV, Tom Bradby, she said, I was so naive to the way the tabloids worked in Britain. I wasn't aware of how everything worked here. You know, I'm not okay. Absolute liar. You knew how they work because you engineered your own column inches.
Well, we're going to be having a bit of a debate about whether they can win back Britain.
Can I just say, I've been just through my head through the whole conversation because Meghan Markle doesn't really do it for me.
No, really.
But when you said sort of the names, when you were saying Ben and Bev, Tom and Emily, right, sounds a bit like... This is ridiculous. This is very ridiculous. But we had this joke the other day. Who hosts the brilliant Sunday morning GB News political programme here?
Camilla Tominey.
Camilla, Tom and Emily.
Oh, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, the dad jokes will continue on into the afternoon. I apologise in advance. Of course, political news too. Tory exodus. I mean, Theresa May's 60th serving Conservative MP to announce they're stepping down. Are they just jumping off a sinking ship?
Well, we're going to give Tom Harwood whatever Joe Biden had yesterday before the show starts in 25 minutes.
He was able to stand up. He was able to deliver that speech.
I know.
It was actually kind of impressive.
It was remarkable. Right, that and a lot more with Tom and Emily. Good Afternoon Britain in 25 minutes. For now, though, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go anywhere.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
President versus the Prince. Wow, what a story, Jenny. And this basically could mean Donald Trump rummaging around in these allegations in Spare about Prince Harry's drug taking, and it may affect his future residency plans. And of course, lest we forget, Meghan was very outspoken of her disdain for Trump when he was voted in. Jenny, this story really gets the juices flowing.
Yes. Well, Donald Trump, I think most people would accept, is probably quite a vindictive man. And he is a law unto himself. And he's made it very clear that he regards Harry and Meghan as being completely on their own if he becomes president. Thus far, they've been somewhat, I suppose, protected by the Biden administration. There is a group, a conservative group, who are trying to force the publication of the application that Harry filled in for his visa when he moved to America. And you know, the rules and laws on drug taking are quite intense over there. And the question is, did Harry say, as he did in his book Spare, that he had taken quite a considerable number of drugs? Did he say that on his visa application? But Trump has made a lot of quite unpleasant noises saying that he'll be on his own and it could threaten his residency in the United States.
California, the public enemy number one of Donald Trump, actually make the Sussexers more popular.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Martin. I think so. You know, they would be seen as victims of Trump, and their liberal credentials would be feted and celebrated, as they are already, I suppose, in California. So they could become new heroes and heroine of modern-day politics. So we will have to wait and see. But Trump has definitely got it in for.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Good morning to you. It's 11:38 on Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, and Bev Turner.
Very good morning. Thank you for joining us. Officially Britain's favourite news channel all day yesterday. It is, of course, International Women's Day. Every other channel you will watch will just treat this like it's a positive, that there's no ambiguity about this issue at all, that we need to have International Women's Day. I personally feel a little bit conflicted about it this morning when I was driving in. I was thinking, I know that things are bad for women. I know that we still aren't on the boards of many companies and everything, but it's so complicated and it feels like there's so much identity politics. I'm sort of a bit embarrassed. I don't think I really need it.
I'm going to keep reading off the line you gave me this morning.
What was that?
Every day is International Women's Day, especially for my wife and my mum.
Every day is International Women's Day for all the women who are working hard every single day. It's Mother's Day on Sunday, of course, this weekend, for all the women out there, particularly the mothers.
Don't forget your cards, your flowers and your
keeping the ship afloat. And this, of course, led on earlier to this debate about trans women, Labour's policy on trans. We had a sense of it from earlier from one of the APPG, the All-Party Parliamentary Group, debates about this. And Virginia says only biological women should be included in Women's Day. Ray says trans women should not be included. Please stop the idiocy. There are 2 sexes and your sex cannot change no matter how you might feel. And Nick says Women's Day should be banned. As Amy Nicole said, it's just an excuse to run men down. It should be called International Let's Slag Off Men Day because we're more important than they are.
I'll just read a quick one from Chris. Good morning, Chris. He says, Ben, stop saying that everyone out of work at the moment is doing it through choice. I didn't actually say that, but I've written to various shows on GB News to explain that as a 50-plus straight white man, I am now unemployable for some reason. The box-ticking ESG woke-infected companies now seem to think that's more important than experience. Yeah, I get you, Chris. I was just merely mooting the point about those 9.3 million people out of work. How many are actually sick? I don't know the answer. I was just asking the question.
Right, moving on, Royal Matters. Prince William is visiting the Oval in London later this afternoon to meet an Earthshot Prize winner.
Yeah, we're now joined by our royal correspondent Cameron Walker, who is on the grounds now. Cameron, what's going on?
Well, Ben, one of the questions I get asked more recently at the moment is where is Prince William? Why isn't he doing many public engagements? And I think I may have an answer for you now. And it appears Prince William has been secretly working away on a new strategy, moving away from these public-facing royal engagements and instead doing a lot of work behind the scenes to what he hopes will have real-world impact. So I'll give you an example. He launched his Earthshot Prize in 2020 to find solutions to repair our planet over the next decade. One of the winners is a small startup from London called Nopla, and they found a way to create food packaging using seaweed instead of plastic. And over the last few months, Prince William, I'm told, has been busy trying to help negotiate some kind of deal between Nopla and the UK's largest food and drink caterer for sporting venues such as this at the Kia Oval in London around the country. Now, this stadium has a capacity of 27,500. That times around 50 in the country. That's an awful lot of food waste no longer, or plastic waste no longer going into the ocean. So that's Prince William's ambition, but will it pay off? It's also a huge gamble, isn't it? Because the late Queen said that members of the royal family need to be seen to be believed. So perhaps it won't be palatable with certain members of the public who want to see Prince William and Princess Catherine and the rest of them in public more often than they currently are. Now, aides insist and tell me that Prince William is not stopping public engagements altogether, far from it, but his focus is very much on this behind-the-scenes work, so in the long term he can create what he described as tangible impacts in things such as the environment, mental health provision and homelessness prevention. So later on today, Prince William will be here at the Oval Cricket Ground meeting members of, well, the Surrey cricket team and, of course, members of Nopla as well, trying to highlight this kind of deal that has been struck in the hope that he can perhaps persuade people that all this work he's doing behind the scenes can have an impact in the long term. But it is a gamble, and it's going to be a long time before we see if it's going to pay off.
Well, good for him. That's almost like a proper job for the Prince of Wales. I'm very impressed. In opposition, one might say, to Meghan Markle, who just wants to come back here and hire a PR company so that we're all convinced that she's basically going to be the saviour of what? The royal family? No. Herself? Probably. What do we know about her plans, Cameron?
Yeah, it was a really interesting exclusive in the Mail this morning. I must stress it's not been confirmed by Meghan Markle's team, but nonetheless, if it is true, it is feeding into that narrative, isn't it, of first they relaunched their Sussex Royal website, then they appeared on a mountain for the countdown to the Invictus Games in Canada. And you look at the opinion polls, Meghan Markle is only one above Prince Andrew in terms of popularity in the United Kingdom, according to the latest YouGov poll. Prince Harry isn't doing much better either. So what the Mail is saying is, or claiming, is that Meghan Markle is looking for a PR person in the UK to try and rebrand her and make her more popular in the United Kingdom at the time where this void has been left in the United Kingdom with members of the royal family, when the King's receiving cancer treatment, Kate's obviously out of action, Prince William doing less public engagements for reasons I've just discussed, and the rest of the working royals are ageing. So could Meghan Markle and Harry fill that void? That is the accusation. Whether or not that's going to come to fruition, we'll have to wait and see. But of course, as you mentioned, Ben, there are claims that she very much did meet that Mail Showbiz editor to try and get herself some column inches. So the thing is, now she's very famous, isn't she? So I don't think she would get away with that. If she was going to be creating that kind of backdoor strategy, I think people would know about it.
Yeah, she definitely did, but I know she did. Cameron, just in your opinion, what went wrong for Meghan here? Why didn't it work out?
A good question. I think what they found is that complaining about their time in the royal family, particularly when the Oprah interview came out, etc., and the world was suffering from lockdown and COVID, it just didn't sit well with members of the public, and I think that reflected in the opinion ratings. And what they have shown is, since Harry's book, Memoir Spare, where he's continued to complain about being a member of the royal family and everything that went with it, that was also not helped the opinion rating. So I think that's probably what went wrong. So what we're seeing now is this rebrand, trying to capitalise and try and make themselves more philanthropic and do more charity work, etc., like the other members of the royal family do, to see if that pays off.
So much, Cameron. Cameron Walker there, awaiting the arrival of Prince William, which we will no doubt bring you here on GBNews. Also,
props to Prince William doing all this at a time when his dad's ill. Kate, the Princess of Wales, is also ill. So well done him. Good on you.
Getting rid of single-use plastics, I am absolutely on board with that in terms of keeping our oceans nice and plastic-free. Right, still to come in just a moment. Anthony Joshua, you will know him, British boxing megastar. He's going to be fighting somebody, but they're not actually a boxer.
MMA,
Stay tuned.
UFC.
Hello there, good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on, quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across Across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day, though, than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight, we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north, though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England too, but across northwestern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland, it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain, though, will come and go for more southern areas, with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 11:49 on Britain's Newsroom here on GB News with me, Ben Leo, and the lovely Bev Turner.
Oh, lovely. It's only because International Women's Day is saying that. Right, there's a massive British heavyweight fight tonight. Anthony Joshua is going to be boxing a former UFC champion. We'll explain that in a minute, Francis Ngannou. But if he loses, he can return to the ring. Can he return to the ring with any respect?
Yeah,
Can you explain this? Can you just explain this to me?
So Anthony Joshua's had a troubled recent couple of fights. I think he's won his last couple of proper boxing fights, but before that, he was beaten in some big title fights and his reputation kind of went down the drain. Now he's fighting a cage fighter. Here to tell us the predictions and everything else is boxing expert Spencer Oliver. Spencer, just lay it out in layman's terms for our viewers who don't know what UFC is or cage fighting. What's Anthony Joshua up to? Why is he doing this?
Well, first of all, hi guys. How you both doing? And yeah, listen, it's a massive fight tonight in Saudi Arabia. Anthony Joshua goes in against Francis Ngannou. Like you said, the UFC champion, and he had his first professional fight back in October, actually, against none other than Tyson Fury. And the people that saw that fight would have seen that Francis Ngannou went in the ring, and people thought this was a joke, this fight. It was a crossover fight because Ngannou, coming from a different discipline against the best heavyweight in the world right now in Tyson Fury. Well, Ngannou come out of there with a lot of credibility. He had Tyson Fury on the seat of his pants in the third round, and a lot of people, including myself actually, felt Ngannou had won the fight. He'd done enough. So look, I know he's come out from a different discipline, but this guy is a different breed. You know, like you look at his backstory, where he's come from, the journey to get to where he's got to is an incredible one. It really is. And Anthony Joshua goes in tonight and puts his reputation on the line against Ngannou, because a loss here tonight would be really damaging for Joshua. So I listened to what you guys said in the build-up there. You're right. He lost to Alexander Usyk a couple of times, and a lot of people felt that Anthony Joshua was done. Since then, he's come back. He's had 3 good wins in the last 11 months. He beat Jermaine Franklin. A lot of people still weren't convinced. Then he went in against Robert Hellenius and knocked him out in 7 rounds. Now people started to think, is that the old Anthony Joshua coming back? Is this the guy? And then in the last fight against Otto Wall in December the 23rd out in Saudi Arabia, we saw the old Anthony Joshua, the guy that's had that confidence back. You know, and he was letting his shots go, and it was an impressive performance. But this is an intriguing fight. We've got a 2-time world heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, world silver medalist going in against a guy that has had 1 fight and lost it.
Spencer, you say that
crazy.
You say that AJ's reputation's on the line. What's the sweetener? How much is he getting paid?
Listen, he's getting. I think he's getting in the region of $50 million before. This is before pay-per-view cut. So that's what he's getting paid. It's risk versus reward. Now, what it is it's a high risk for Joshua because his reputation's on the line. But the reward is, guys, May the 18th, Tyson Fury goes in against Alexander Usyk for the undisputed heavyweight title. And Anthony Joshua boxes the winner of that. I personally think that'll be Tyson Fury. And then we get the fight that we've all been craving for, Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury, a fight that we've wanted for so long.
So just tell us we know what boxers do, but tell people what Ngannou traditionally, how he fights. How is it different to boxing? Here he is, Francis Ngannou, because he can kick and do all sorts of stuff, can't he?
Absolutely. He's from the MMA world. So he's in the UFC. He was UFC heavyweight champion. He's a guy that is very, very tough. We saw that against Tyson Fury, you know, and like you say, that they kick, they punch, they elbow. But, you know, I think it's Francis Ngannou. If you look at him, the guy that he is, where he come from, you know, the journey that he's been on, he's from Cameroon. You know, he was there. The poverty was terrible that he was in. He had a dream about being a boxer. He fled Cameroon. He went through numerous countries, ended up in France. He ended up in jail twice on the way trying to get to France as well. Got to France, said in 2000 this was, and says, listen, I want to be, 2012, sorry, listen, I want to be a boxer. And the trainer said a quicker way to earn money is go into the MMA. He went into the MMA, becoming the MMA world champion, UFC world champion. Then he's finally got his dream of becoming a boxer. Goes in against Fury and puts the WBC champ on the seat of his pants. Quite an incredible story. The journey the guy's had,
brilliant.
You know, where he is remarkable. When you look at inspirational stories, and Ngannou's got that, as does AJ.
Thanks, Spencer. And you explained it beautifully. Spencer Oliver there, boxing expert. Even I am now enthusiastic.
Love his energy.
About that. Right, that is it from Britain's Newsroom for this morning. I've had a lovely time.
Me too. Thanks for joining us and for all your emails on International Women's Day and for watching. Here's Tom and Emily on Good Afternoon Britain.
Well, the government's counter-extremism czar has said that Britain has in some ways become a permissive society for extremism. What can be done?
Yes, and he's also warned that London has become a no-go zone for Jewish people. We'll find out what exactly is behind those claims after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It will be a dry afternoon for many areas with some sunshine, but there's a relatively brisk easterly breeze for many areas. That's as this area of high pressure across Scandinavia still brings in that easterly wind. Further south, though, we'll start to see low pressure arriving, bringing some weather fronts and some rain for the weekend. But that easterly breeze across northeastern areas will continue to drag in cloud and some drizzly rain through the next few hours. Further south, though, parts of the southeast, it'll be a much sunnier and brighter afternoon compared to yesterday, so it will feel a little bit warmer in the sunshine, but that easterly wind will bring a chilly feel for many areas. Through tonight, the cloud will thicken from the south and west as this band of showery rain pushes up to cover many southern coasts by tomorrow morning. Further north, though, it should stay dry, but it will be quite a cloudy and windy night. So that does mean it will be frost-free by the start of the weekend, but it's still going to be a fairly chilly start. The winds will be a bit stronger through Saturday compared to today, particularly across northwestern areas as the winds are squeezed over the high ground. So quite a gusty afternoon, but it will be dry and bright for many western areas of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland and northwestern England. But further south, cloud will thicken through the day and there'll be some showery outbreaks of rain. These could turn quite heavy across the southwest in the afternoon, but it will still feel fairly pleasant in any brighter breaks. See you later on. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of